Rain was a beast tamer, a job that sounded cool but in truth was treated like that of a servant. For years, he worked under the hero's party, doing everything from cooking and cleaning to gathering supplies. He did every chore, every errand, everything except fighting. And despite his effort, everyone saw him as useless. One day, without warning, Rain was summoned by his teammates. They coldly informed him he was being kicked out of the party. Their reason? He was a burden, someone who couldn't deal damage and only relied on weak beasts to fight for him. Stunned, Rain called out to each of them, hoping it was just a cruel joke. But all he saw were cold eyes and mocking smiles. Even Arios, the party leader, demanded that Rain hand over his gear, claiming it belonged to the team. Leaving the guild, Rain felt empty. He had believed his comrades scolded him because they cared, that he was part of something greater. But the truth hit hard. He was nothing but a disposable pawn, tossed aside once he'd outlived his usefulness. As he wandered aimlessly, a group of children ran up to him, asking for one of his taming shows. Not wanting to disappoint them, Rain smiled and agreed. He formed a temporary pact with a small bird and made it soar gracefully through the air. The children cheered, amazed by the display, shouting that they wanted to become beast tamers just like him. Hearing that, Rain couldn't help but laugh. Just days ago, these same kids dreamed of being heroes. But now he understood. The heroes' party he once served wasn't admired at all. They looked down on commoners and only smiled in front of nobles and the rich. Realizing this, Rain finally saw that he was never the useless one. He had just placed his loyalty in the wrong people. After talking with the kids, Rain's heart felt lighter. He decided to start over, to live freely as a real adventurer, one who relied on no one but himself. And his first goal was clear: to defeat the Demon Lord. Rain went straight to the Adventurers Guild to register. Since he was new, he carefully asked the receptionist, Natalie, to explain everything. Surprised by how sincere he was, she eagerly went over the details. But when she found out he was a beast tamer, a job often looked down upon, she grew worried. Failing the test isn't the end, she warned, but dying definitely is. Rain simply smiled and accepted his first quest: to slay 10 goblins and collect 20 bundles of herbs. It sounded simple, the perfect beginner's test. Using his ability, Rain formed a pact with a squirrel to guide him through the forest. Within a short time, he had taken down the goblins and collected the required magic stones. While resting, a sudden scream echoed from deep within the woods. Without hesitation, Rain ran toward it. There, he saw a girl cornered by a killer tiger, a ferocious D-rank beast known to take down even veteran adventurers. Rain rushed in, stabbing with his dagger, but the blade snapped instantly against the monster's steel-like hide. He knew he couldn't win, but he had to buy the girl time to escape. Just when it seemed hopeless, the girl leapt into the air and unleashed a powerful kick, shattering the beast's neck in one blow. Rain froze. She wasn't human. She was from the cat spirit tribe, a race so rare, most people believed they had gone extinct. After the fight, the girl collapsed from hunger. Rain hurried to catch her and offered some food from his bag. As she ate hungrily, he studied her features: soft cat ears, bright eyes, and incredible agility. She truly was a cat spirit, unable to use magic but blessed with physical strength beyond human limits. When she finally finished eating, she introduced herself as Kinnaid, a cat spirit who had lived her entire life in the mountains. Bored of her peaceful world, she decided to travel and see the outside, but since it was her first journey, she forgot to pack food and nearly starved to death. Thankfully, Rain had appeared just in time. The two quickly became friends. When Kinnaid learned that Rain had been expelled from the heroes' party, she grew furious on his behalf, something no one had ever done for him before. Her genuine empathy touched Rain deeply. Then Kinnaid made a bold request. She wanted to form a contract with Rain. Normally, that would be impossible. Cat spirits could never be tamed. But Rain decided to try, and miraculously, it worked. A glowing mark appeared on both their hands, proof of their new bond between beast tamer and cat spirit. Afterward, Rain returned to his quest. He formed another temporary pact with a rabbit and sent it to call its entire family for help gathering herbs. Before long, he completed his task faster than anyone else. Kinnaid could only stare in awe. A normal beast tamer could handle one creature at most, yet Rain commanded an entire group with ease. It was unbelievable, but for Rain, it was simply natural. After completing his quest, Ryan returned to the guild carrying 10 magic stones and 20 bundles of herbs. Once the inspection was done, the receptionist Natalie smiled brightly and congratulated him. Rain had officially passed the entry test and was now recognized as an F-rank adventurer of the Horizon Guild. She handed him a guild card as proof of identity and even slipped him a small bonus as encouragement. Natalie cheered him on, saying that if he kept up this pace, he'd rise through the ranks in no time. Rain only gave a wry smile. He knew that to advance faster, he needed a stable place to live, but with just 50 silver coins in his pocket, even treating Kanade to a decent meal seemed far-fetched, let alone building any kind of dream house. While Rain was finishing the paperwork, Kanad waited for him at a nearby tea stall. When he came back, she happily ran up to congratulate him on becoming a real adventurer. Rain was about to ask if they should rest for a few days or take another quest immediately, but Kanade was already eager to go again. Just then, a scar-faced man approached them, eyes gleaming with ill intent as he stared at Kanade. The moment he realized she was a member of the cat spirit tribe, his expression turned lecherous. Rain quickly stepped in front to shield her, but the man ignored him and rudely told Kanade to ditch the weak beast tamer. Kanade's ears twitched in anger. She grabbed Rain's hand and declared in front of everyone that Rain was the strongest beast tamer and the one who had formed a contract with her. The scar-faced man burst out laughing, mocking the idea that a soft-spoken, gentle-looking guy like Rain could command one of the most powerful races in existence. He challenged Rain to an arm wrestling match, saying that if he won, Kanade would be his. Rain didn't want to cause a scene on his first day, but to prevent further harassment, he accepted. The match began. The man barely shouted "Start" before Rain slammed his hand down in an instant, dislocating his wrist and sending him sprawling on the floor, face pale with shock. The entire guild erupted in surprise. Natalie quickly rushed over. Recognizing the troublemaker immediately, she sighed. The man, she explained, was a repeat offender, a well-known nuisance already on the guild's blacklist. This time, he had finally earned himself a permanent expulsion. When he tried to grab at her skirt to beg forgiveness, Natalie casually slammed a table onto his head, knocking him out cold before dragging him away like a sack of trash. After things calmed down, Rain couldn't help but wonder where his sudden strength had come from. Kanade explained that it was because of the contract they'd formed. Since she was from the strongest race, his physical abilities had been enhanced to match hers, giving him the power of a cat spirit. With the incident behind them, Rain and Kanade took on a new quest. Kanade expected something grand, perhaps a heroic mission or a sealed sword from legend, but it was just a simple herb-collecting job. Rain laughed, explaining that as a low-rank adventurer, these beginner tasks were normal. Still, he didn't complain. To him, it was a chance to gain more experience. Using the rabbits he had previously tamed, they finished the request quickly and efficiently. On their way back, Kanade's sharp ears caught the sound of shouting in the distance. The two hurried over and found an old man surrounded by bandits. The adventurers he had hired as guards had already fled. Kanade wanted to run back for help, but Rain feared the old man wouldn't survive that long. He came up with a plan. He would rush in to draw the bandits' attention while Kanade pulled the old man to safety. Kanade was touched by his bravery, but worried that Rain's body hadn't fully adjusted to the power of the contract. Overusing it could cause serious harm, but as she watched him move gracefully and strike with confidence, her fears faded. In no time, Rain defeated the entire group without even using a weapon. When Kanade asked how, Rain explained that he had been trained in hand-to-hand techniques so he could subdue creatures without hurting them during taming. The old man thanked them endlessly, but still trembled in fear that the rest of the bandits would return. Rain decided to wipe out the entire gang to prevent any future danger. Kanade worried that he couldn't take on over 100 men alone, but Rain had already planned ahead. He would use a swarm of bumble barons, special insects with paralyzing venom, to bring them down one by one. Kanade was astonished that a beast tamer could even control insects, but Rain revealed that insect taming was simply a subclass technique he'd mastered. Rain then asked Kanade to head back to the guild and bring other adventurers or knights for backup. Hearing the term Knight Order for the first time, Kanade had to ask for an explanation, then sprinted off, reminding him to be careful. Rain smiled and commanded his swarm of bees to attack. Meanwhile, Rain's former heroes party was struggling. Before heading into the Lost Forest, they had accepted the same escort quest for that old man, only to abandon him when the bandits appeared. They'd since hired another beast tamer, but he was far weaker than Rain, able to control only one creature at a time. When ordered to do more, he protested that it was impossible. Controlling multiple beasts at once would overload a tamer's mind. Line, one of the heroes, berated him for being weak and forced him to take the blame for the group's failure, all to protect their reputation. While they were busy arguing, Rain had already wiped out the bandit hideout. Shortly after, Kanad arrived with several adventurers, all stunned by the sight. The entire gang was tied up neatly on the ground. As they took over the cleanup, Rain thought he could finally rest. But then a terrifying roar echoed from deep within the cave. The ground trembled as a massive lizard king burst through the stone wall, a C-class monster, its scales as hard as steel and jaws strong enough to crush a cow in one bite. The bandits had kept it imprisoned as their last resort. The surrounding adventurers went pale with fear. Rain told them to retreat, while he and Kinnaid stayed behind to fight. Working seamlessly together, the two managed to defeat the Lizard King, collecting a trove of magic stones as their reward, ending what started as an ordinary day with a spectacular victory. After slaying the giant monster, Rain and Kinnaid were praised by the Adventurers Guild. Their achievement was so impressive that Rain was immediately promoted to rank E and received a handsome reward. The two happily went shopping around town, buying decorations for their new home. After celebrating at a fancy restaurant, they decided to spend the night at an inn. However, there was only one room left. Kanad accepted without hesitation, while Rain blushed furiously, insisting he could sleep outside. Though she trusted him completely, Rain still reminded her not to be too trusting with people she'd just met. Kinnaid simply smiled, saying that she already saw him as a real partner, someone she could rely on. In the end, Rain stayed. That night, while Rain slept soundly, Kinnaid sat quietly by his side. As a member of the rare cat spirit tribe, she'd seen countless people try to exploit her power, but Rain was different. He treated her with genuine kindness, never out of greed or ambition. Kanad recalled how Rain had been expelled from the heroes' party. Even though he acted like he'd moved on, she could tell a part of him still carried the pain of betrayal. Deep down, she just wanted to ease that pain, to make him smile again. A week passed, and the two worked together flawlessly, taking on quests one after another. Their lives as free adventurers were peaceful and simple, but calm days never last long. When Rain visited the guild for a new quest, Natalie pulled him aside. She explained that a mysterious person had been blocking travelers on the southern bridge, challenging anyone who crossed, young or old, man or woman. No one had died yet, but many were seriously injured, and fewer people dared to pass each day. Natalie hoped Rain would take the job. At first, he hesitated. He was still only rank E after all, but Natalie assured him the quest had no rank restriction, and the reward was 5 gold coins, enough to buy a fine house. That was all the motivation Rain needed. When they arrived, Kinnaid was astonished by the massive bridge. It was the only structure connecting the central continent's Horizon City with the southern lands. If it were closed, trade and travel would come to a halt. All the victims had survived, but none would speak about what had happened, as if hiding something embarrassing. Then suddenly, a massive shadow fell from the sky. The ground shook as a gigantic fire dragon landed before them. She introduced herself as Tanya, a member of the dragon tribe, one of the most powerful races in existence. According to their customs, every young dragon must leave home at the age of 15 to travel and grow stronger. Tanya had chosen to guard this bridge, the perfect place to find strong opponents to spar with. Scanning Rain and Kinnaid from head to toe, Tanya smirked arrogantly and challenged them both. If they lost, she'd throw them off the bridge. Confident in her own strength, Kinnaid agreed without hesitation. The fight began. Tanya attacked first, throwing a punch so powerful it could have knocked out a normal fighter instantly, but Rain somehow blocked it, though his face turned pale. Not wanting to lose face, Tanya struck again. Rain shouted for Kinnaid to dodge, but dragons don't announce their attacks. Kinnaid took a direct hit, losing part of her tail. Furious, she charged forward and fought back with everything she had. Forced on the defensive, Tanya realized her opponents weren't as weak as she thought. She got serious, and the battle intensified. Rain jumped in to help, but was caught by Tanya, who tossed him into the air and hurled a massive fireball his way. Thankfully, Rain and Kanad worked together perfectly, dodging at the last second. Realizing brute force wouldn't work, Rain signaled Kanade to hold Tanya off while he focused on his surroundings. He quickly sensed a flock of small birds nearby and asked for their help. Within moments, the sky filled with wings as dozens of birds swarmed Tanya, distracting her completely. She roared in frustration, swatting them away. But soon, her movements slowed. Her body went numb. Rain calmly explained that those birds were called Beto, colorful creatures with extremely potent venom. A few pecks were harmless, but a whole flock? Even a dragon would fall. Knowing she'd been defeated, Tanya bowed her head in acknowledgement. Rain offered her a place in his party. At first, Tanya thought he meant to enslave her, but instead, Rain simply wanted to be friends, and maybe keep her from causing trouble. Finding his sincerity amusing, Tanya agreed to join them. The trio returned to the guild to report their success. The reward would be issued after verification. Natalie, however, couldn't help but notice the new girl with horns and a tail. Clearly a Dragon Tribe member. Not wanting complications, Rain quickly denied it and dragged both girls out of the guild before anyone could ask questions. On the way home, Rain told Tanya to keep quiet about her past at the bridge. If word got out, the city would panic. But Tanya didn't seem to care. Thrilled to see a bustling human town for the first time, she kept challenging random people to fights, forcing Rain and Kanade to haul her away to a quiet hill just to keep her out of trouble. Soon they learned why none of Tanya's former opponents had spoken up. All of them were muscular men, too embarrassed to admit they'd been beaten to a pulp by a single girl. Before parting, Tanya surprised everyone by asking to form a contract with Rain. Though he already had one with Kanade, refusing a Dragon Tribe member seemed wasteful, so he agreed. Kanade wasn't thrilled about sharing Rain's attention, but she accepted it for the sake of the team. Meanwhile, Rain's former heroes party began to regret their decision. Arios proposed apologizing and convincing Rain to return, planning to use him until their next mission was done, only to abandon him again afterward. What they didn't know was that Rain now had loyal companions, a home, and peace of mind. He had no reason to go back. Still, having two girls on the team came with new challenges. That night, Rain ended up sleeping on the floor, while Kanade and Tanya argued endlessly on the bed above. He could only sigh with a tired smile, realizing that his quiet days were probably over for good. The group's next mission was to eliminate a swarm of slimes. These were low-rank F-class monsters, weak, slow, and usually ignored, which allowed them to multiply uncontrollably. Now they were invading farmlands, draining ponds, and ruining crops, leaving the villagers in despair. Kanad wasn't afraid of their strength, but hated their sticky, slimy texture. Tanya, on the other hand, was excited, boasting that her fire magic could roast an entire horde without even lifting a finger. Seeing the two girls so cheerful, Rain felt a bit more at ease. The team searched the forest for hours without spotting a single slime. Rain thought such a massive colony should have left traces somewhere, but they were surprisingly well hidden. To locate them faster, he decided to fuse a part of his soul with a bird's, a high-level beast Tamer technique that lets the user see through the creature's eyes and communicate via mana waves. As Rain collapsed into a trance, Kanade and Tanya panicked at first, but soon realized he was using a skill far beyond what normal tamers could do. Both were astonished, admitting that Rain's talent was on an entirely different level. From the sky, Rain finally spotted a large nest of slimes hiding under ancient trees. The group rushed there at once. Kanad, fired up, picked up a huge boulder ready to crush them, while Tanya asked if Rain could use any magic. Embarrassed, he admitted he only knew basic fireball and minor heal, not exactly impressive spells. Still, Tanya insisted he try. Rain focused his mana, traced the formula, and released the spell. To his shock, the small fireball exploded like a bomb, wiping out every slime instantly and leaving only a pile of magic stones behind. Tanya laughed proudly, explaining that Rain's magic power had been amplified by his pact with the Dragon Tribe, just as his physical strength was enhanced through his bond with Kanade. Before they could celebrate, more slimes appeared, swarming like waves. Rain saw this as the perfect chance to train his mana control. Unlike hand-to-hand combat, manipulating mana required patience and absolute precision. Tanya turned into a fierce instructor, her fiery aura radiating pressure so strong, even Kinnaid stood frozen on the sidelines. After a tense training session that left Rain drenched in sweat, he finally mastered his flow of mana, and together they wiped out every remaining slime. Back at the guild, while Rain handled the paperwork, a little girl ran up to Kinnaid and Tanya, asking what monsters they'd defeated today. When she heard it was slimes, her face lit up. Her family's fields would finally be safe. Watching that smile, Rain suddenly realized his new kind of problem. All the reward money he earned vanished into the bottomless stomachs of his two mighty companions. Apparently, the strongest races in the world had the strongest appetites too. Later that night, Kinnaid and Tanya grew curious about Rain's background as a beast tamer. At first, he brushed it off, but seeing their eager faces, he began to share his story. He was born in Ein Village, a small place famous for producing tamers. Both his parents practiced the craft, so from a young age, he learned how to communicate with animals and even insects, a rare sub-branch of taming. To him, that nameless village was a peaceful paradise, until tragedy struck when he was 12. That day, while training outside the village, Rain returned to find his home engulfed in flames, attacked by monsters. He was the only survivor. A passing group of adventurers rescued him and took him in. Years later, he met Arios's hero party and thought it was his chance to change the world. But instead, they treated him like a servant, hauling supplies by day and standing guard by night. Rain apologized for bringing up such a dark story, but to his surprise, Kinnaid and Tanya didn't pity or mock him. Instead, they looked proud to follow someone kind and selfless. Tanya grew furious just thinking about how Arios's team had tossed him aside, while Kinnaid was sure those fools were now struggling without him. Rain smiled gently, saying he had already let go of the past. All he wanted now was for the three of them to stay happy together. Their teamwork grew stronger with every quest. With Rain's taming abilities and two of the world's most powerful races on his side, low-level monsters stood no chance. But that strength led to overconfidence, especially for Tanya, who believed she was invincible. Without hesitation, she charged into a monster nest alone. Though she defeated most of them easily, one enemy struck from behind, and Rain dove in, taking the blow for her. Blood soaked his shoulder. Thanks to his healing magic, the wound soon closed, but the guilt in Tanya's heart couldn't heal so easily. On the way back, she stayed silent, standing alone on a bridge as the river reflected her sorrow. The same little girl from before happened to pass by, gently reminding her that if something hurts, she should talk about it, not keep it inside, then ran home before her mother scolded her. Moments later, Rain found Tanya. She quietly muttered an apology, like a child admitting her mistake. But Rain didn't scold her. He simply patted her head, telling her to be more careful and trust her teammates next time. That night, Rain went to the hotel desk to book another room so everyone could rest comfortably. The receptionist just smiled and teased, "Good luck," leaving him blushing. And so, Rain realized peaceful days might not last forever, but with these two by his side, even the chaos ahead might be kind of sweet. After completing countless quests, Rain's group had finally saved up a decent amount of money. It was time to invest in themselves. Kinnaid and Tanya, both born from powerful races, didn't really need upgrades, so Tanya suggested they get new equipment for Rain instead. As the three chatted happily along the road, Rain suddenly froze. Standing ahead of them was his old hero party, clearly waiting for him. For a moment, Rain couldn't help but reflect. Once he had been cast out as dead weight, treated like a burden. Now he was living peacefully, working alongside two beautiful and powerful companions. Days were filled with adventure, nights with warm meals and laughter, though he still had to sleep on the floor. But just as life was beginning to feel stable, fate decided to throw him back into the path of those who had once crushed him. They greeted him with fake smiles and shallow apologies, but Rain could see right through the act. Arios, the so-called leader, stuck to him like glue, using their old friendship as an excuse to start a conversation. He claimed his team needed Rain's help to navigate the Lost Forest, a dense, ever-shifting labyrinth where the paths changed every hour. Without rain to carry supplies, they had failed their last attempt. According to Arios, deep within that forest lay the Shield of Awakening, a legendary artifact necessary to defeat the Demon Lord. Without it, the world would soon be overrun by monsters. Hearing this, Rain hesitated. Memories of his village burning to ashes flashed before his eyes. Though these people had betrayed and humiliated him, he didn't want innocent lives to suffer the same fate. After a long pause, Rain agreed to join them, but this time he was no longer the same obedient boy they once controlled. The moment he accepted, the hero team dropped their act and walked off arrogantly to make plans, treating him like a subordinate. Kanad's patience snapped. She stepped forward, demanding they apologize to Rain first. "He's not some tool you can throw away and pick up again when you feel like it," she said sharply. Her words enraged Arios and his crew. Instead of apologizing, Arios grabbed Rain by the collar and began hurling insults at Kanade and Tanya, implying something indecent between them. Rain clenched his fist and landed a solid punch to shut him up, warning him to watch his mouth. The heroes froze. None of them expected Rain to fight back. Calmly, Rain declared, "If anyone dares say another word of disrespect, I'll beat you until you can't recognize your own face." Furious, Arios drew his sword and challenged him. Rain accepted without hesitation. The battle was split into pairs. Kanad faced a bald warrior wielding a flaming sword. He unleashed his ultimate skill. Explosive flame burst blade, setting his weapon ablaze. Kanad simply kicked once, and the flames died instantly. Shocked, the man threw everything he had into one final strike, only to realize she hadn't even used half her strength. When he asked why someone so strong would follow Rain, Kanad's answer was a kick straight to the face, knocking him out cold. Meanwhile, Tanya faced Mina and Lean, who combined their magic for a powerful dual assault. Tanya didn't even flinch. She calmly analyzed their spell formulas, snapped her fingers, and nullified them completely. "So, this is what you call advanced magic," she said dryly. "How childish." Raising one hand, she summoned dark clouds and blazing meteors across the sky, purely for show. The shock alone made Mina and Lean faint where they stood. Finally, Rain clashed with Arios. The hero sneered, "A mere beast tamer like you could never defeat me." But before he could finish, Rain nearly decked him in the face. Arios retaliated fast, striking with great speed and a flurry of techniques, yet Rain dodged each blow effortlessly, studying every move. The attacks hit hard, but lacked precision. When the opening came, Rain struck back with a perfectly timed punch that sent Arios staggering. Desperate, Arios switched to magic. Knowing he couldn't win a spell duel, Rain changed tactics. In the middle of combat, he forged a quick pact with a nearby bee, commanding it to sting Arios at the perfect moment. The venom took effect immediately. Arios froze, body paralyzed. Now trembling, he dropped his weapon and pretended to beg for mercy. But Rain was no longer the soft-hearted fool he once was. He threw one last warning punch, enough to knock him out, but not kill him. When the dust settled, Rain's team had won decisively. Kanade and Tanya rushed over, throwing their arms around him in relief and pride. Rain smiled softly, realizing just how far he'd come. He was no longer the weak, expendable Tamer from before. He was now a true leader, strong enough to stand tall, protect his friends, and carve his own path forward. Rain's group finally stepped into the Lost Forest, a dark, damp place exactly as the rumors described. Tanya grimaced, muttering that she should just burn the entire forest down, but Rain quickly stopped her. There were still countless living creatures here. As they talked about the Shield of Awakening, the legendary artifact said to be usable only by true heroes, Rain unfolded the map Arios had given them, only to realize it was useless. The forest was alive, constantly growing and reshaping itself. They'd have to find their own way through. According to Arios, the monsters guarding the shield were hiding deep within the forest, so they needed to reach them as soon as possible. Kanad and Tanya were clearly annoyed about helping that so-called heroes team, and Tanya confidently claimed she could solo the Demon Lord herself. Rain couldn't help but smile at their loyalty. Still, he knew the truth. To defeat the Demon Lord with the shield, only a hero could awaken its power. Unable to wander aimlessly, Rain used spirit synchronization to merge part of his soul with a bluebird and scout the terrain from above, while Kanade and Tanya guarded his body. From the sky, he spotted faint trails hidden beneath the dense canopy and marked a route toward the forest's heart. But when they followed it, they somehow circled right back to their starting point. Even after consulting the birds again, they remained lost, meaning something unnatural was at work here. Using a search spell, the group traced a series of glowing lights that led to a massive central tree, the core of a vast illusion barrier blanketing the entire forest. Tanya examined the energy and confirmed this wasn't simple illusion magic, but a large-scale ward. She told Kanad to chop down the tree to break it, but Rain disagreed. He didn't want to destroy nature. When he asked if there was another way, Tanya said yes, but it would take time. Kanade worried that if they delayed too long, the hero's team would look down on Rain, so she prepared to strike the tree immediately. Just as she touched the bark, a voice echoed through the forest, warning them to leave. From within the tree's roots emerged a young woman of the elf tribe. Elves, one of the most powerful magical races, were known to have even greater mana reserves than the dragons. But for over 2 centuries, they had vanished from the human world after violent conflicts and widespread deforestation. The elf girl was cold and stern, demanding that they leave the forest at once. Rain calmly introduced himself and explained their purpose, but she grew impatient and threatened to use magic to drive them out. Realizing they couldn't win a fight here, Rain's group withdrew, for now, to come up with another plan. As they regrouped, the 3 wondered why an elf, normally peaceful by nature, would become so aggressive. What's more, both Kanade, a cat spirit, and Tanya, a dragon, were present beside a human, yet the elf still showed herself. That was unheard of. Rain suspected it was because they had approached the core of the barrier, forcing her to reveal herself. Still, one question lingered. If monsters truly dwelled deeper inside, could the elves be working with them? Tanya didn't care for speculation. She just wanted to break through the barrier and move on. But Rain didn't want conflict. He decided to try talking to the elf again. When they met her once more, the elf remained defiant. Rain, however, spoke calmly, explaining their mission in detail and even offering to take any punishment as proof of good faith, as long as Kanade and Tanya were spared. The elf unleashed a barrage of illusion spells, but Rain stood his ground, taking every hit without resistance. His resolve startled her. Someone willing to endure pain to protect others could not possibly be evil. Her heart began to waver. The past had taught her to despise humans, her people's peace shattered by their greed, yet this man was nothing like those she remembered. Rain admitted that humanity had committed many wrongs, but insisted not all humans were the same. "There are still good people in this world," he said, "and I'm one of them." Kanade and Tanya couldn't stand watching any longer and rushed to defend him, only to start arguing with each other mid-conversation, leaving the elf completely baffled. Still, the fact that Rain had earned the loyalty of both a dragon and a cat spirit, 2 supreme races, made her pause. Perhaps he truly was different. The elf extended her hand, a gesture of trust. Now properly introduced as Sora, she sat with them and listened. Ryan explained that they were searching for the Shield of Awakening, but had been stopped by the elves' own barrier. He asked if she could remove it. Sora refused. The barrier existed to hide the entrance to her village. Destroying it would expose her entire race. She also revealed a shocking truth. There were no monsters in this forest at all, meaning Arios' team had lied. Then, unexpectedly, Sora presented Rain with the Shield of Awakening herself. It was part of a long-standing pact between the elf tribe and the heroes of old. When the time came, the elves would pass the shield on, asking for nothing in return. As they prepared to leave, Rain noticed something troubling in Sora's eyes. She seemed uneasy, as if burdened by a secret. When he gently pressed, she said nothing, but her expression said everything. Understanding her pain, Rain offered his help. Moved by his sincerity, Sora finally opened up. She had a twin sister, Luna. The two had always been inseparable, working together to maintain the forest's protective wards. But one day, they were ambushed by the Demon Lord's forces. Despite fighting desperately, Luna was captured by a powerful creature known as the Dark Knight, a being completely immune to magic, vulnerable only to physical attacks. The elves, being a magic-based race, were helpless. The Dark Knight's goal was to exterminate all powerful races, and the elves were next on their list. Sora had fled to warn her village, but her pleas for help were ignored. Torn between her duty and her love for her sister, she was left with nothing but despair. Rain looked at her with unwavering resolve and said, "You won't have to fight alone anymore." For the first time in centuries, Sora smiled because finally someone had given her a reason to believe in hope again. After finalizing their rescue plan, Ryan's team immediately set out. Time was running out, and the life of Luna, Sora's younger sister from the elf tribe, hung by a thread. Rain took full responsibility for the mission. He was determined not to let anyone suffer again, especially an innocent girl. Following the trail, they soon reached the enemy's hideout. No words, no hesitation. They went straight into battle, focusing all attacks on the Dark Knight, the powerful monster holding Luna captive. Knowing he was immune to magic, the team switched to physical combat. A flurry of quick strikes overwhelmed him at first. When the Dark Knight tried to kill his hostage to turn the tide, Tanya intervened. She used spatial magic to teleport Luna to safety. From that moment, the real fight began. Rain and Kinnaid stayed behind to face the Dark Knight head-on. Despite his massive size and terrifying presence, Kinnaid's relentless kicks sent him staggering, barely keeping his balance like a drunk in a storm. Yet Rain remained cautious. Even after taking so many hits, the Dark Knight hadn't fallen. He wasn't just any monster, he was said to be a high-ranking general under the Demon Lord, capable of large-scale destruction. A single mistake, and the entire forest could be leveled. Sensing danger, Rain switched to Plan B, summoning a swarm of forest bees. Their purpose wasn't to kill, but to disrupt visibility and paralyze the enemy briefly. Amid the chaos, Rain cast a rare enhancement spell on Kinnaid. A surge of energy coursed through her, her body overflowing with power. Without a word, she dashed forward and delivered a devastating punch straight to the monster's chest. His armor shattered like glass. His huge frame was thrown back, and he collapsed motionless. The battle ended so quickly that everyone froze in disbelief. Kanada laughed proudly, asking where Rain had learned such a cool and overpowered buff spell. Tanya was stunned too. She thought that kind of magic had been lost for centuries. Rain only smiled faintly. "Back home, everyone could do it," he said. "It's nothing special." When the dust settled, the group breathed a sigh of relief. Luna regained consciousness, still dazed. Once Rain explained that her sister had sought their help, Luna's face lit up with joy. She rushed to Sora and hugged her tightly. After so many painful days apart, the two sisters broke down in tears. They thanked the team repeatedly, especially Rain, who had planned the mission so carefully and risked his life to protect them. Rain simply nodded, while Luna's playful teasing made everyone laugh. Sora blushed in embarrassment. The two sisters couldn't have been more different, one calm and quiet, the other loud and mischievous. It seemed like their reunion would lead to a peaceful return to the elf village. But reality wasn't so kind. Because Sora had once sought help from outsiders, many in her tribe turned their backs on her. Staying meant living under constant scorn. So with heavy hearts, the sisters decided to leave their homeland. Yet the world outside the forest was cruel, monsters everywhere, and neither sister had real survival experience. Even powerful magic couldn't feed or shelter them forever. That's when Kanad suggested, "Why don't they join our team? It would give the sisters a home and strengthen the group in return." Tanya agreed, but hesitated. Following Rain meant living like humans, far from the forest they once called home. That fear mirrored Sora's own doubts. But Luna spoke up first, determined, "We'll follow Rain, the one who saved our lives." Then came the next challenge, the bonding ritual. Elves were one of the supreme races, their mana complex and volatile. Even a slight mistake could have catastrophic results. Encouraged by Tanya, Rain began the ritual, focusing intensely to balance the twin flows of magic from both sisters. The process was exhausting, but in the end, Rain succeeded, forming contracts with both Sora and Luna. It was nothing short of a miracle, yet the mana drain was so great that Rain collapsed, only to be caught by the two elves just in time. Later, the team brought the Shield of Awakening back to the heroes' party, though none of them were eager to see those faces again. When they saw Rain return unharmed, the heroes were suspicious. "You finished the mission in 2 days?" they scoffed. "It took us a week, and we found nothing." Rain didn't argue. He simply told them to use a detection spell. The moment they did, the truth hit them. It was the real artifact. Their jaws dropped. Curious, they started prying about the two elf girls accompanying him. Rain dodged their questions, took his reward, and prepared to leave. But the bald warrior, the same one Kinnaid had beaten earlier, suddenly invited Rain to rejoin their party. "Just my opinion," he said quickly. "Arios doesn't know yet." At that moment, Rain finally understood. They had cast him aside once, but now that they saw his true strength, his ability to clear the lost forest effortlessly, they wanted him back. With Rain, their team looked powerful. Without him, they were nothing but a circus act. They even tried bribing him with money, pretending it was a fair offer. Typical. They treated him like dirt before, and now they begged like cowards. But Rain had no reason to return. He already had trusted companions, people who treated him with genuine care. If he could form a contract with the mighty elf tribe, why would he need that broken team? Rain never fought for fame or wealth. He fought to make things right, to end the endless cycle of defeat against the Demon Lord. Meanwhile, the so-called heroes still strutted around, blaming others for their failures and pretending to be chosen saviors. Yet Rain's journey raised a bigger question. What truly makes a hero? Is it divine blood or courage, compassion, and the strength to unite others? With each step, Rain looked more like the true protagonist of this world, while the fake heroes were nothing more than NPCs, fading quietly into the background of his story. Morning sunlight filtered through the windows as Rain and his team sat down for breakfast. Everyone was in good spirits. Since forming a contract with the elf sisters, Sora and Luna, Rain's strength had noticeably grown. Using the reward money from their last mission, he decided to take the whole group into town to buy new equipment. On the way, Sora and Luna clung tightly to Rain's arms, afraid their elven identities might be exposed. Suddenly, two familiar faces appeared, the same thugs Tanya had taught a lesson back at the Southern Bridge. Now they were flattering their big sister non-stop, making Tanya grin with pride. Meanwhile, Kinnaid was helping a fruit seller on the roadside and got rewarded with a shiny red apple. Watching Tanya and Kinnaid blend so naturally with humans, the elf sisters couldn't help but feel surprised. They had never seen such powerful races, a dragonkin and a cat spirit, acting so kind and approachable. Moments later, a group of children ran up, teasing Rain. "Bringing home more wives again, mister." Sora blushed bright red, while Luna burst out laughing, almost casting a spell to scare them. Rain and Sora quickly stopped her. If she used magic, their elven attire would appear and blow their cover instantly. Eventually, the group arrived at the most famous weapon shop in town, run by a grumpy dwarf named Gans. Kinnaid grew nervous under his stern glare, while Tanya foolishly muttered something about dwarves being weird, earning a sharp side-eye from the owner that made her freeze. Luna, on the other hand, was fascinated by a whip hanging on the wall, thinking beast tamers used it to punish anyone who disobeys. Her comment left Sora pale with embarrassment at her sister's questionable imagination. Rain examined a small dagger, perfectly balanced, sharp, and light, but something about it felt off. Just then, a muscular man walked in, slammed a pile of coins on the counter, and demanded the finest sword in the shop. Gans casually handed him a rather ordinary-looking blade. Rain frowned and asked directly, "You're hiding the real goods, aren't you?" "These don't look like your best work." The shop fell silent. Then Gans suddenly laughed and praised Rain's sharp eye. It turned out every weapon on display was something he'd forged during his spare time, used to test the judgment of customers. He sighed, explaining that most adventurers didn't understand their own abilities. They just threw money at the most expensive weapons, only to discard them once something new and shiny came along. "To a blacksmith like me," he said, "every weapon is like a child. Watching them get tossed aside, it hurts." Tanya's unexpected empathy moved the old dwarf. Feeling understood for the first time in ages, he agreed to forge a special weapon just for Rain. But there was one problem. He'd run out of mithril ore. The team returned to the Adventurers Guild to register a new mission. The place was packed. Word had spread that Arios, the so-called hero, was staying nearby to recruit people for his Defeat the Demon Lord campaign. Rain's expression darkened for a moment, but he quickly patted Kinnaid and Tanya's heads, assuring them he was fine. Soon after, Natalie, the guild receptionist, greeted the group and noticed the two elves. Sora bowed shyly, while Luna boldly introduced herself with full confidence. So confidently, in fact, that Natalie misunderstood their relationship with Rain, forcing him to flusteredly explain himself. Rain then submitted a commission request to investigate Gance's mithril mine. According to Tanya, mithril was an extremely rare mineral used to craft weapons that could last a lifetime. Though the mine had been in Gance's family for generations, the ore had recently started vanishing without a trace. Rain suspected it wasn't exhaustion. If the mine were running dry, production would decline gradually, not disappear overnight. Something else had to be going on deep inside. Trusting Rain, Gans granted them permission to investigate. When asked about payment, Rain declined any money. He only wanted a weapon personally forged by Gans as a reward. The old dwarf smiled and agreed. The group set off soon after. The path to the mine was close by, and the mood felt almost like a field trip. But under the blazing sun, Sora and Luna quickly grew exhausted. Spotting a sparkling lake, they begged to take a short dip. Rain, ever cautious, formed a temporary contract with a nearby squirrel to act as a lookout before settling down to rest. By the water, the girls relaxed and laughed. The elf sisters shyly asked Kanad and Tanya for their secret to having such perfect figures, only to be comforted with gentle giggles and, "You'll grow into it someday." Then Kanade suddenly screamed, sending Rain bolting upright and sprinting toward her, only to find Luna mischievously splashing water with a fish to prank her. Realizing he'd just barged in on the girl's bath, Rain spun around, face bright red, mumbling apologies as everyone burst into laughter. Rather than scolding him, Kanade and Tanya praised him for reacting so fast, always putting their safety first. When they finally reached the mithril mine, the team hid and observed. Rain noticed signs of illegal digging. Even the birds circling above seemed restless, signaling danger. Soon, a group of rough-looking men emerged from the tunnels. Rain warned the others to go easy, so they could interrogate them later. But with Tanya and Kanad's strength, the fight ended in seconds, all enemies unconscious on the ground. Unable to question them, Sora stepped forward and suggested using memory magic. Through her spell, she saw flashes of the truth. The men were mercenaries secretly mining mithril to sell on the black market. When the spell ended, the elf sisters playfully tilted their heads toward Rain, demanding their reward head pats, just like Kanad and Tanya always got. Rain chuckled, giving in, gently patting their heads as everyone laughed together. And so, after gathering enough clues, Rain and his companions prepared to descend deeper into the mithril mine, unaware that a far greater mystery was waiting for them below. The team ventured deep into the mine. Rain warned everyone to stay alert. He could sense eyes watching them from above. It was highly likely their enemies had a beast tamer as well. The moment they stepped inside, a blazing fireball shot straight toward them. Sora and Luna reacted instantly, raising a magical barrier to block the attack. The sisters, eager to prove themselves and maybe earn another head pat from Rain, charged forward with determination. Seeing that, Tanya and Kanade jumped in to back them up, while Rain focused on the man commanding the ambush. The enemy refused to surrender. He lunged at Rain with a dagger, but Rain swiftly disarmed and knocked him down. Enraged, the man summoned a B-rank behemoth, a massive monster that shook the ground with every step. Watching him command it, Tanya immediately realized he was a beast tamer, someone who could control magical creatures through sheer mana and technique. The man bragged that he had raised this behemoth since it was young, so it would never turn on him. The beast roared, charging at Rain with terrifying power. The whole mine trembled as its massive claws tore through the ground. Rain quickly realized that if the fight dragged on, the tunnel might collapse. He signaled the others to evacuate everyone to safety. Tanya stayed behind to guard the exit, while Kanade rushed in to help Rain restrain the tamer. Rain ordered her to capture the man alive while he handled the behemoth directly, because to stop it, they needed to stop its master first. The behemoth's attacks were brutal but predictable. Rain studied its movements, dodging each strike with precision, yet he knew time was running out. On the other side, Kanade managed to subdue the man with lightning speed. Seeing his chance, Rain decided to try something no one had ever done before, seizing control of another tamer's monster. Gathering all his power, he poured his contract energy into the behemoth, overriding the enemy's command, and it worked. The beast froze mid-swing, its eyes softening before lowering its head obediently toward Rain. Theoretically, stealing control from another beast tamer was impossible, But Rain, strengthened by his past contracts, had broken that rule. The Tamer screamed in disbelief, forcing his mana into the behemoth again to reclaim control. The backlash was immediate. Sensing his hostility, the behemoth turned on him, ready to strike. In that critical moment, Rain launched a precise fireball, knocking the creature unconscious before it could kill its former master. The man collapsed, unable to understand his defeat. Calmly, Rain explained, "Between humans and monsters, no contract can erase their natural hostility. The moment you turned on it, your behemoth sensed it and fought back." He decided to keep the creature under his own control to prevent further danger. After capturing the entire mining gang, Sora used memory-reading magic to uncover the truth. The images revealed that all of them had once bought weapons from Gans, the dwarf blacksmith. But the items they purchased had been display models, forged casually when Gans had free time. When they discovered their weapons were low quality, they grew bitter and decided to steal Mithril to get revenge, crippling Gans's ability to forge real weapons. When Rain told Gans everything, the old man fell silent, guilt written on his face. He admitted that displaying his practice weapons to test customers had been dishonest, not only to his clients, but also to the weapons he called his children. Rain didn't scold him. He simply rested his hand on the table and said gently, "Everyone makes mistakes. What matters is how we fix them. Just pour your heart into each weapon again, like you used to." Gans was stunned. Though being lectured by someone younger could have been insulting, he instead felt oddly at peace. Smiling, he decided to forge a special weapon just for Rain. When Rain leaned over to whisper his own ideas for the design, the two began discussing in secret, while Kinnaid and Tanya looked on curiously, dying to know what they were planning. Meanwhile, things weren't going well for Arios and his so-called hero party. He was recruiting new members, but none met his expectations. A beast Tamer came to apply, yet could only control one weak creature and couldn't fight in battle, so Arios dismissed him immediately. He even asked if the man could tame the strongest monster species, a feat impossible for any human. Mina, his close companion, watched in quiet disappointment. Many applicants were capable of supporting their mission, but Arios was being too harsh, comparing everyone to Rain and rejecting them all. She softly reminded him that his standards were too extreme, but Arios snapped back in anger. With Rain gone, he vented his frustration on Mina instead. Though upset, she endured it, knowing it was her duty as a servant of the gods. Before leaving, she gently told him, "Don't let this consume you. Your mission is to save the world." But Arios' eyes darkened. Deep down, he thought, "Before saving the world, I'll destroy Rain." The next morning, Rain visited the Adventurers Guild to check on the captured miners. Natalie informed him that they had been stripped of their adventurer status and sentenced to forced labor, a fair punishment for theft and illegal beast handling. Rain nodded quietly and left with a somber look. Later that day, he took Sora and Luna to the food market. He bought each of them a freshly roasted sweet skewer, which they devoured in seconds, only to regret finishing so fast, making Rain laugh. Then Luna asked curiously, "After forming a contract with us, what kind of power did you gain? You already have Kinnaid's physical strength and Tanya's magic boost." Rain scratched his head awkwardly and admitted, "Honestly, I don't know." That honest answer left both sisters stunned. They began speculating. Maybe Rain had awakened the ultimate spirit magic, a secret art far beyond even advanced-level spells, one only spirit kind could use. But as Rain stood there blinking in confusion, their excitement faded into disappointment. Feeling embarrassed, they jokingly called themselves failed contracts. Seeing them downcast, Rain gently patted their heads. "Don't say that. You're both important to me." Surprised, they asked, "Why do you trust us so much? We were outcasts, remember?" Rain smiled faintly and shared his past, how he used to be weak, desperate to prove his worth, but was still abandoned. That experience taught him one thing. True strength isn't just about power, it's about trust between comrades. He looked at them warmly. "I choose who I fight alongside, and that includes both of you. Even if this contract doesn't give me new powers, you're still my teammates." Hearing that, Sora and Luna's faces lit up again. Their smiles made Rain's heart feel light. Perhaps that was his real power all along, the bond and trust growing between him and his friends. The group was strolling through the city when a cocky blonde young man suddenly approached them. With a smug grin, he declared that he was allowing Sora and Luna to get acquainted with him. The two girls exchanged glances filled with disdain. The man introduced himself as Ega, the only son of the city's lord. When they ignored him, he grew irritated and ordered his men to surround them. Before they could even react, Rain stepped forward and effortlessly knocked the entire group out in seconds. Refusing to admit defeat, Ega threatened to harm the townspeople unless Rain handed over the sisters. Rain hesitated. If Sora and Luna used their magic to fight back, their identity as spirits would be exposed, and they'd never be able to live peacefully in the city again. But if he delayed any longer, innocent people would get hurt. With no other choice, Rain took a deep breath and unleashed a chain of fireballs through continuous chanting, a signature technique of the spirit tribe. The blazing orbs struck with pinpoint precision, their power so overwhelming that Ega's men fled in terror. The crowd was saved. Sora and Luna thanked Rain for protecting them and the people, while the citizens watched in awe. A beast tamer using spirit magic was unheard of. An old woman quietly approached and warned Rain to leave the city soon, as if she knew trouble was coming. Unbeknownst to him, Arios was watching everything from the shadows. Later that day, Sora and Luna excitedly told Kanade and Tanya about Rain's new ability, claiming that his strength had awakened thanks to their spirit contract. Rain agreed. Ever since bonding with them, his control and accuracy in continuous chanting had become faster and far more stable. The two sisters beamed with pride, happy that their contract had finally made a real difference. Kanade and Tanya, meanwhile, were just relieved everyone made it back safely. From talking to the townsfolk, the group learned more about Ega. He wasn't just arrogant, he was dangerous. Rumors said he had kidnapped women he fancied, imprisoned them in his mansion, and even abused them. The city lord covered it all up, as Ega was his only son. Any evidence that surfaced was quickly erased. Hearing that, Tanya was furious, ready to storm the mansion herself. She worried Ega would soon target Sora, Rain, or even the townspeople. Rain stayed quiet, deep in thought. He wanted to protect everyone, but against someone with political power, what could a nameless beast tamer like him do? Kanade and Tanya seemed to read his mind. They assured him that he wasn't alone. They also wanted to defend the city. Encouraged by their resolve, Rain decided it was time to act. Meanwhile, Ega ordered his soldiers to cover up the destruction from earlier and capture Rain at any cost. In a fit of rage, he took out his frustration on a young beast girl imprisoned in his mansion. At the same time, Rain and Kanade visited the Knight's Order to report Ega's crimes. The moment they mentioned the name Ega, the clerk's face turned pale. A squad of knights came forward, calling it a minor misunderstanding, then mocked Rain for defaming the noble family. Realizing the knights were covering for him, Rain said nothing more and left quietly. As they walked away, Kanade sensed someone following them. Turning around, they saw a woman in knight's armor. She bowed apologetically and introduced herself as Stella, vice captain of the Horizon Division. She thanked Rain sincerely. Stella had heard tales of a beast tamer and a catgirl adventurer who had defeated the Black Fang bandits, something even the knights couldn't accomplish. Then her tone grew somber. She revealed that the Knight's Order had fallen into corruption, controlled by the Lord's faction. Many knights now spent their days indulging in luxury, covering up crimes, and looking down on the very people they were supposed to protect. Their leader, Captain Dial, was the worst of them. Stella confessed her wish to restore the Order's honor and asked Rain for help. Rain remained cautious, but Kanade could feel Stella's sincerity. "She's not lying," Kanade said. Trusting her intuition, Rain agreed to cooperate. Their plan was simple but risky. Spread a rumor that evidence of Dial's collusion with the city lord was hidden in a warehouse outside the city. Hearing this, Dial grew nervous but had no choice. He sent his men to retrieve the supposed evidence before anyone else could. As they stormed the warehouse, they were met head-on by Sora and Luna, blocking their path. Inside, Rain, clad in a brand-new armor forged by guns, designed for speed and accuracy, was already waiting. He struck with flawless precision, taking down squad after squad with ease. His final attack was aimed directly at Dial, but the man narrowly dodged. Then Stella appeared, revealing that her loyal subordinates had already secured the other divisions across the city and obtained undeniable proof of Dial's crimes. Cornered, Dial roared in anger and charged. Stella, though not as strong as him, refused to back down. She blocked and countered every blow with sheer determination, and with one final thrust, she pierced through his defense, defeating him. The knights nearby immediately carried out the order for his arrest. Back at the mansion, Iga flew into a rage when he heard that Dial had been captured. He took his anger out on the Beast Girl again, but despite everything, he remained smug, confident that his private army was still enough to turn the tables. Then a familiar voice echoed from the window. It was Arios, disguised and cloaked. He proposed a deal. They would join forces to destroy Rain. He whispered venomously that Rain was growing stronger, strong enough to command the most powerful races, and would soon steal not only Iga's status and wealth, but even the women he desired. Arios tossed him a ring filled with dark magic, urging him to use it to kill Rain. As hatred and envy consumed Iga, the ring glowed brighter, feeding on his emotions. Arios smiled coldly, satisfied. The stronger Iga's hatred, the greater the ring's power would become. Episode 11 opens with a touching memory from a three-tailed fox girl. She recalls the peaceful days when the villagers worshipped her as their guardian deity, a life filled with laughter and warmth. But that happiness vanished in an instant when darkness and violence descended upon her world, shattering everything she held dear. In the present, Stella has been promoted to captain of the Knight Order. Wasting no time, she leads her troops to the Lord's mansion, demanding an immediate investigation into the corruption and cover-ups of the ruling family. She even announces that the former captain has already been arrested for taking bribes. The demand is denied, and soldiers rush out to block their path. Stella commands her unit to prepare for battle, this time with Kanad and Tanya at her side. Just one combined strike from those two powerhouses is enough to wipe out the outer defenses. Inside the mansion, Ega watches from above with a twisted grin. Spotting the two strongest races standing beside Rain, he becomes convinced that his black ring can sever their contracts and make them his own subordinates. Meanwhile, Rain and the rest of the group sneak in through another route to rescue the hostages. Sora and Luna use tracking magic to locate the captives and teleport them to safety, allowing Kanade and Stella to unleash their full strength outside. While exploring the underground levels, Luna suddenly senses an enormous source of magical power, pure and overwhelming, nearly equal to her own. Rain immediately realizes it must belong to another supreme race. But why is such a being here? He instructs the sisters to continue the rescue while he goes to investigate. Deep within a locked chamber, Rain finds a massive iron cage, and inside it, a frightened fox girl with 3 tails. She is unmistakably from the Divine Tribe, one of the highest races. He breaks the lock and uses healing magic on her wounds. The girl introduces herself as Nina, trembling but relieved to know he's not an enemy. Through her shaky voice, Rain learns that Nina once lived peacefully in a small village, until Ega appeared, threatening to punish her people unless she obeyed him. Forced into submission, she wore a cursed slave collar, imbued with magic, and endured relentless abuse and captivity. Rain tries to break the collar by force, channeling his magic to overwrite the curse, but the resistance is too strong, causing him great pain. Determined, he gathers the combined power of his contracts with Kanade, Tanya, Sora, and Luna, releasing a burst of purifying energy that shatters the collar and finally sets Nina free. Outside, Iga's soldiers desperately attempt to use the hostages as shields, but it's too late. Sora and Luna have already teleported everyone to safety. Stella leads her knights into the Grand Hall, arresting the city lord and securing all evidence of his crimes. When the man tries to flee, Rain fires a magic tether that binds him in place. Just then, Aga emerges from the shadows, activating the deathly aura within his black ring and stabbing Rain with the spell Reaper's Scythe, a high-level death magic said to kill instantly. On the rooftop, Arios watches with a satisfied grin, convinced his plan has succeeded. But moments later, his smile fades. Rain is still standing, completely unharmed. Everyone is stunned. Luna, curious, decides to test a theory. She blows a faint cloud of poison toward Rain. Sora, horrified, immediately grabs her sister by the neck for using her brother-in-arms as a test subject. Luna protests, explaining that she suspects Rhine has gained status ailment immunity from their spirit contract, meaning both death magic and poison have no effect on him. The theory proves correct. Rain remains unaffected. Sora fumes. Luna nervously laughs it off while Nina trembles in fear as the two sisters argue in the middle of battle. Above them, Ega stands frozen. His killing blow failed. Hatred and fury twist inside him, feeding directly into the black ring, which greedily absorbs his emotions. A foul purple aura bursts from his body, thick with the stench of corruption, and begins to consume him entirely. Before their horrified eyes, Ega's body mutates, his screams turning inhuman. The black magic overtakes him completely, transforming him into a demon. The scene mirrors Rain's darkest memory, the day his own village was destroyed by demons. And now, that nightmare has returned once more, right in the heart of the Lord's mansion. The newly resurrected demon was filled with excitement, but seeing too few survivors around, he spread his wings and flew straight toward the crowded city, ready to unleash chaos and destruction. Rain instantly felt uneasy. If that thing reached the city, hundreds of innocent lives would be in danger. He turned around and saw his teammates already standing by, determination blazing in their eyes. Without wasting a moment, Rain came up with a plan. He asked Stella to protect the townspeople and look after Nina, but the little fox girl clung tightly to his sleeve, begging to help. Knowing how much she hated fighting, Rain smiled softly and patted her head. "Just wait for us, okay? Everything's going to be fine." The group rushed toward the city. When Rain declared that he'd take the demon down, the monster laughed mockingly, amused by the human's boldness. As he dropped his guard, Kinnaid and Tanya charged in head-on, while Rain used his magic ropes to distract him, giving Sora and Luna a chance to cast their spells. But their combined attacks barely left a scratch. Feeling insulted, the demon raised his hand and summoned a massive army of creatures, his so-called adorable minions. In an instant, the streets were flooded with grotesque monsters. Kinnaid and Tanya fought fiercely, cutting down wave after wave, but the enemies just kept multiplying. A powerful strike sent Kinnaid crashing to the ground, while Tanya, furious, unleashed her dragon's breath. Yet the demon still overpowered her. After several blows, she collapsed from exhaustion. The demon sneered, unleashing a destructive spell that reduced buildings to rubble. Rain quickly boosted his teammates' power, but the tide of battle refused to turn. When the demon flew high, preparing to obliterate all of Horizon City, Tanya forced herself up, releasing one last fiery blast to stop him, though it only delayed the inevitable. Rain knew that if he didn't act soon, the entire city would be lost. At that moment, Sora and Luna stepped forward. They would handle the evacuation using teleportation magic so Rain could focus entirely on the fight. "Don't worry about us," Luna said. "Everyone from the mansion already knows we're spirits." Rain nodded firmly. He trusted them completely. While Rain and Tanya kept the demon busy, Stella led her knights through the streets, shouting, "Our mission is to protect this city, no matter the cost." Sora and Luna arrived, asking for support to evacuate the civilians. Stella immediately agreed. But fear ran deep. Many townspeople refused to step into the glowing teleportation circle, terrified of spirit magic. Then a familiar face appeared, the hot dog vendor. With a cheerful grin, he volunteered to be the first. His bravery inspired the crowd, and soon, one by one, people began entering the circle, vanishing safely to another location. Before the evacuation could finish, soldiers came running. The monsters were closing in. Luna told Sora to keep the spell going and charged into battle. Kinnaid and Tanya were still holding on, but their strength was waning. Just as hope began to fade, the adventure team Tanya had once trained appeared, along with several squads from the Horizon Adventurers Guild. Even Gans, the blacksmith, brought out his finest weapons, each one crafted by his own hands. Together, everyone united to defend the city. Watching them fight side by side, knights, adventurers, and civilians alike, Nina felt her fear melt away. Deep inside, a new strength began to awaken, a burning will to protect. Meanwhile, Rain still couldn't reach the demon. The distance was too great, and any direct charge would be suicide. Kinnaid suggested that Tanya transform into her dragon form and fly up, but it was too dangerous now. Even Sora's teleportation couldn't get them close enough. Then Rain remembered only the divine tribe could freely manipulate space and teleport precisely. At that exact moment, Nina ran toward him and hugged him tightly. The others instantly realized it. Of course, the divine tribe could help. Rain crouched down and asked gently, "Nina, can you help us?" Though trembling with fear, the little fox girl nodded with determination. Kanad and Tanya stayed behind to hold the monsters off, while Rain and Nina teleported into the sky. The demon launched a massive sphere of energy, but Nina reacted instantly, warping them behind him in the blink of an eye. Rain activated the gauntlet forged by Gans and lunged forward. He unleashed a powerful control override spell, attempting to seize command of the demon's monsters. The demon roared in disbelief. "A human! Stealing my power!" Rain just smirked. "I'm only a beast tamer." Enraged, the demon shattered his restraints and lunged at Rain, only to be struck by his own monsters, now under Rain's control. Overwhelmed and consumed by light, the demon let out a final broken laugh. "Interesting. Human. Tell me your name." Rain's voice was calm, almost cold. "That's not necessary." The battle was finally over. Nina, exhausted, began to fall, but Tanya swooped in just in time to catch her. The morning sun broke through the clouds, casting warm light over the city. Horizon City was saved. Days later, peace returned. Stella was officially promoted to captain of the Knights, vowing to rebuild the order on true justice. Those involved in the Lord's corruption were taken to the royal capital for judgment. She also sent a team to investigate Nina's village, which had been abandoned after her capture. Rain believed that one day, Nina would reunite with her people. Kinnaid eagerly helped rebuild the city, almost like a true local. Tanya continued to hide her identity as a dragonkin, though everyone pretty much knew. Sora and Luna blended into daily life, often stopping by the hot dog stand to snack with their old friend. Though praised as a hero, Rain only smiled. "I'm no hero, just a regular beast tamer." The group burst into laughter, because deep down they all knew the truth. It was this ordinary beast tamer who had saved the entire world. Nina, still buzzing after the battle, asks to become Rain's strength too, just like the others. Rain understands and welcomes her, though he admits he's not confident after so many contracts already. One look at everyone's hopeful faces, though, and he takes the leap. A few minutes later, the pact is forged. Kanad and Tanya immediately sweep the little fox girl into a hug. Sora and Luna are just as thrilled. They've always wanted a cute little sister. The team heads to the guild and runs into Stella. Why is the new knight captain here? Because from now on, the Knights and the Adventurers Guild will cooperate to keep the city safe. Everyone's genuinely happy. This is the right direction. Stella thanks Rain's party. Without them, restoring the Knights to their former ideals wouldn't have been possible. Natalie then waves them over with business. She announces a rank promotion for Rain. He's baffled. He only just hit E rank not long ago. But Natalie has her reasons and bumps him straight to C rank on the spot. Honestly, she wanted to slap an A rank on him and be done with it. There's a fat cash reward too. Feeling suddenly wealthier, Rain treats the crew to a good meal. Natalie also notices a new face. Rain introduces Nina as their newest teammate. Natalie squeals "Glomps the kid," then freezes when she realizes Nina is Divine Tribe. Whispered panic. "She won't be mad I treated her like a child, right?" Nina shakes her head. No harm done, so Natalie hugs her again, and the rest of the girls pile on. Talk turns to logistics. With the party this big, their current in-room is a shoebox. Natalie suggests, buy a house. The guild can even help. Listings, subsidies, the works, especially for capable parties who plan to settle in the city. Tanya can practically feel Natalie's "you're not leaving Horizon City" aura. Rain asks for opinions. Everyone wants to stay. With savings plus the guild subsidy, Rain agrees to sign. They tour properties. Nothing clicks until the last one. Airy wooden build, big garden, Kinnaid and Sora approve. Over 10 rooms with space for Tanya's dream huge bed, and a well-equipped kitchen and bath that Luna and Nina love. The price, within Rain's budget. So why wasn't this shown first? Luna smells a setup. Natalie backpedals and finally confesses, the house is haunted. Kanad immediately hides behind Rain. Tanya sighs. Some apex predator the Lynx girl is scared of ghosts. The hauntings sound petty. Pillows get flipped while you nap. Bath water turns cold. Sugar and salt swapped. Rotten eggs and shoes. Leftover curry smeared on drying laundry. Gross? Yes. Lethal? Number. They'd hate to pass on such a perfect place. So Rain proposes a test. Investigate first. Decide later. They unlock the door. Pitch black inside. Nina sneezes. Kanade yanks Tanya's tail in panic. The house is spotless, like someone cleans regularly. Then furniture rattles, voices hiss, "Get out!" And a maid-shaped figure materializes. Sora and Luna ready a sealing spell, but the maid reappears dangling from the ceiling. The sisters debate power levels. Too strong, and they'll blow up ghost and house alike. The ghost wavers, spooked by the threat, then pops up from the floor to scare Kanade. Big mistake. Kanade's fear spikes. Her claws come out and tear the maid's dress. Proof the spirit can be hurt by physical force. Now it's the ghost's turn to be terrified as Kanade goes feral, biting hems, smashing furniture, jump-scaring the specter right back. Sora and Luna seize the opening and pin the spirit with a binding circle. Tanya lifts a still berserk Kanade by the scruff like an angry house cat. Rain steps in to negotiate. The ghost lunges to possess him. Nope. He locks her movement with a clever soul-binding trick he once learned about from an old neighbor, something like spirit taming. He won't say how it works, only that she still has more person left than most restless dead, so he's betting she can be reasoned with. Realizing she's beaten, the ghost surrenders, only for Rain to offer a handshake. She blinks, then laughs at this strange human. She introduces herself. Tina, a maid from another town who died 30 years ago and drifted here, unable to pass on. Her master had been a sadistic womanizer. She was one of his victims. One day she closed her eyes and woke up a ghost. Since she lost, she's willing to leave. Rain asks Kanada's opinion. Kanade admits she's scared, but if everyone's together, she can manage. Rain then asks Tina to let them live here, with her. Tina is stunned, but hey, thanks to her haunting, they scored a discount. Kanade adds one condition: please stop phasing through walls to spook them. Sora and Luna, ever practical, ask if Tina can teach them cooking. Warm smiles all around, Tina agrees to stay. Rain signs the deed. Natalie is floored, who casually makes friends with a ghost. Across town, the fruit vendor is approached by Arios's hero party. They demand a week's groceries on credit, flashing their hero status. The vendor refuses. He doesn't have the stock to spare. The more they throw titles around, the more people scowl. You didn't lift a finger to save Horizon, and you still strut. Vendors and onlookers turn them down flat. Arios seethes and storms off, the mention of Rain fueling his resentment. Back at the new house, Rain returns from shopping with Kanade. She sprints ahead to welcome him home, adorably formal for once. That night, they throw a housewarming feast. Most dishes are Luna's work under Tina's instruction. Luna proudly declares she'll be head chef from now on. Sorry, sis. With so much food, Nina doesn't know where to start. Kanade and Tanya go feral again at the sight of meat. Bathed in warmth and laughter, Nina thanks Rain. She doesn't feel alone anymore. Her words tug at an old scar in Rain's heart. The day he lost everything, the empty space that never quite healed. But now, he has a family. Tina watches, quietly moved. Rain admits that traveling with Arios never filled that void. Becoming an adventurer, living freely, and meeting these people did. A few tears slip out. He coughs them away. Just hungry, that's all. Everyone pretends not to notice, smiles, and the housewarming dinner begins.